Hi, this is Kim from KimberlyKoehler.com, and today I have a video tutorial for you for a fun necklace. So this necklace builds upon the video I released last week, the wire wrapped bead link video, and so we'll be using a wire wrapped bead link to create a necklace that kind of uses that wire wrapped bead link as a focal point. So instead of talking about it, let's just get started. Okay, we're going to get started with the project. I'm going to show you how to put together this necklace, but I did want to tell you that before we get started, I've actually shown you how to do all of the techniques I'm about to show you. So you could have put this together on your own already. You already have these skills if you've been watching these videos for a while. And I also just wanted to tell you that I have a class called Wire Wrapping for Beginners, where I try to do just that. I teach you with videos and PDFs how to make different wire wrapped components, and then I give you jewelry projects in which you will use those components and switch them out and use your own creativity however you see fit to express yourself. So you can learn more about wire wrapping for beginners at the link below this video. It's at wirewrappingforbeginners.com, and see how it's set up and see if it's the right fit for you, and you can get started immediately with this class and get ready to make your own wire wrap jewelry. But for now, I have this project I want to show you. So the first thing you're going to need for this project is a wire wrapped bead link, which that's this, and I showed you how to make this in the video last week, so I'm not going to go into it this week. You can refer back to that video if you need to. And in fact, I decided, because I really wanted this part to be the focal piece, so you kind of want a bigger bead, which this one is, but I kind of wanted to add extra, so I actually had 3 wire wrapped bead links, and then I have attached them with jump rings. So that is one thing you'll need. And then you'll need some more beads to, kind of do the rest of the necklace. So I have them in this tray so they don't roll around too much. And I'm going to explain how many you need in a moment here with a ruler and such. And then you're going to need some beading wire. And I've kind of talked about beading wire previously as well. Use the best you can for your budget. This is 49 strands, and it goes as low as, I think, 7 strands, maybe even lower. Most of the time I use kind of a middle of the grade 19 strand. So the more strands, the stronger and sturdier it is, and also the more flexible it is. So it kind of works better. So I'm using 49 strands. 19 is great too. When you start getting a little bit lower, the wire becomes easier to break, and the more strands it has, the more flexible it is. So I think you got that. Okay, so the next thing you need are crimp beads. You're going to need a few of those. And then this is optional, but crimp bead covers, they kind of look like little C's. It just adds you put it over the crimp beads to kind of hide them. You're going to need some jump rings. And so then the tools you'll need are chain nose pliers and bent nose pliers, and you are going to need a crimp tool. If you still need to make your wire wrapped bead link, you also need round nose pliers. Oh, and you also need wire cutters to cut your wires. Also, I'm going to be using wire guards for my beaded strands, and that is a technique I'm going to be showing you. I find it to be the easiest when attaching beaded strands to something that's wire wrapped, because you can use jump rings. It makes it a little bit simpler. If you do not wish to use wire guards, I have other tutorials previously that show you how to do stringing without wire guards. In fact, I think I have one video that shows you with and without wire guards. So you can refer back to that and think about how to incorporate that into this necklace. I'm not going to be showing you without wire guards today because I think the best way to do this is with wire guards. So the first thing you need to decide is how long do you want your necklace? How do you want it to fit? Do you want it to be more like a choker, or do you want it to be longer? Measure around your neck, or measure a necklace you already have that's the size of the necklace you want to create. Then we are going to measure our wire wrapped bead length. So if you're using one, just measure that one. I'm using 3. If you're using multiple wire wrapped bead lengths, I suggest attaching them together before you measure so you can get a more accurate measurement. And then we're going to measure this. Mine's just about 6 inches, and it's close enough that I'm just going to call it 6 inches. And I want my necklace to be 20 inches. So that means the rest of the necklace needs to be 14 inches long. So if you want it to be very precise, also measure your clasp and get a measurement on that, and then you can also subtract that from however long you need your necklace to be. So I'm just going to stick with the 14 inches. I don't need it to be exactly 20 inches. I'm going to make 2 sides, so we're going to do each side separately for the beaded part, and so each of those need to be 7 inches long. So there's some math for you. And so I'm just going to set this aside for now, and we are going to make our beaded strands. I have my roller, and I know each side needs to be 7 inches long. I'm going to allow a few extra inches, so I'm just going to cut my wire to about 10 inches long, so I just have a little more room to work with. And I am just going to grab a crimp bead, and we have several, so we'll just, okay, I'm going to add a crimp bead. And those of you who have watched my videos for a while, I like to use 2 crimp beads on each end. If you don't want to, don't do it. It's fine, but that's how I like to do it. It's how I was taught, and it also makes it a little more secure. So how I do it is I add a crimp bead and then a bead, and so I'm just using the beads that I'm going to be using for my necklace. You may just want to use some sort of seed bead, that sort of thing. Like a smaller bead. I think this is small enough that it's going to work. And then I add a second crimp bead. And let's get that on there. Alright. Okay, and now this is where your wire guard goes on. So the wire guard has 2 kind of tubes on it, and then it kind of comes around. So you go through one tube, you go around and back down the other tube. So I'm just going to do that. And then you pull the wire back through the crimp bead, the bead, and then the other crimp bead. And I'm just going to pull this wire a little bit more because I like to also go through the first couple beads when I'm stringing. So I'm just pulling so there's a bigger tail here. Okay, so back through the bead, and then the crimp bead. Okay, and then I was just double checking to make sure all of these beads are over both of the wires, so the tail and then like the main wire. So just make sure they're both through. Now I am grabbing my crimp tool, And so the crimp tool has two different notches in it. There's a bigger one that's kind of closer to the handle and a smaller one that's closer to the tip. So first we will use the bigger one. So you just line up the crimp bead in there, and you can do both at a time. The first step for both at a time if you want, or you could do both steps for each if you want. Then you kind of turn the crimp bead. So you've placed a crease in the middle of the crimp bead, and this is secure now, but we're going to fold, basically you're folding this crimp bead in half. So you kind of turn it and then line it up in the smaller end, smaller notch, which is close to the tip, and then just squeeze it closed. I'm just going to do the same thing with this one. And I didn't get it. And there we go. Okay. So now that is secure, and this is where you can put crimp bead covers on. It's just optional. I think it makes it look a little nicer, but it's totally up to you. And so I just like to use my crimp tool and place my cover in there. You see there's like a C, it's an opening. You basically just put your crimp bead inside of here and then close it. And then this will just close and look like just like a regular bead. So let's start with the bottom one. I like to use my crimp tool because it's easier to hold on to, but you could just use your chain nose pliers. Okay. So there's one, and I'm just going to do the other one on top too. Okay, so we have our end here. It's nice and secure. And so now we're just going to bead. So I'm just using all the same bead. You could make a design, you know, like every other bead or however you want to do it. And I just like to take this tail end through one or two of the beads here. And then I finish stringing, and we'll trim off the extra wire at the end. Okay, so I have this beaded, and so now on the other end, you just want to leave yourself a couple inches so that you can do what we did on this end, on the other end, and finish it off. So again, you're going to do a crimp bead, and then a bead, and then a crimp bead, the wire guard, bring it back around, and close everything off. Okay, so we have one strand beaded, and I like to leave these little extra tails on till I'm done. And you just carefully cut it off close to the bead as you can. And we have one on this side. So that is one side, and you're just going to repeat the exact same thing for the other side. Okay, so we have two completed strands now. So we just repeated the same thing on each side of these, and we have wire guards on the end. The wire guards are going to allow us to attach the strands to our wire wrapped bead link, or links as the case may be, with jump rings. Instead of having to attach them directly to the wire wrapped loops at the end, we can just use the jump rings. So that is what I'm going to do now. I'm just using a jump ring. I've already opened these, and you just use a jump ring and attach one end of your wire wrapped bead link and one end of your wire guard with your beaded strand. And just close your jump ring, and then we just do it on the other side. Wire wrapped bead link wrap, oops, and then the end of the beaded strand. I'm using 4mm jump rings, which I tend to like to use a little bit bigger jump rings. In this case, it works well, you know, to kind of keep everything a little bit closer. So if you need help opening and closing jump rings, I do have a video just specifically on that. Okay, so that's all attached. And now I'm going to use another jump ring to attach my clasp to one end, the other end here. And I'm actually using a larger jump ring on the other end. That's what the clasp is going to attach into. And so now I have our necklace. So we've used two techniques here, the wire wrapped bead link and then just your basic stringing. And we have a nice necklace with a little focal point here. Like I mentioned, you may only want to use one wire wrapped bead link. That's fine. I used 3. You can use multiple as well. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you liked this tutorial, you're probably going to really like wire wrapping for beginners. Now, stringing isn't really wire wrapping. That's not in the class, but the wire wrapped bead link is. And the idea of using different components to put it together into a jewelry project is basically what the class is all about. So I invite you to check out Wire Wrapping for Beginners. You can find it at wirewrappingforbeginners.com, or just click the link below this video. Go to the class, see the curriculum, see if it's a good fit, and you can sign up and get started immediately. So I will see you next week. Have a great week.